Well, welcome. I'm Dan Biles, and I want to welcome you to our first episode of Pasco Podcast. In this series, we'll be discussing leadership and public service. Now, first, we'd like to thank our sponsors, the 540,000 residents of Pasco County, as represented by the Board of County Commissioners. It's through their trust and empowerment of our workforce and leadership team that we are able to bring you this podcast. We created this podcast to explore topics of interest to public servants and to help build leadership skills and leverage them for success. The best way to share this insight is through the experiences of our peers, their successes, and their challenges. We hope this inspires you to pursue leadership development goals. Now, joining us today for our first episode, we have Cathy Pearson, the Assistant County Administrator for Public Services, and Keith Wiley, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources. Now, first, as we get started, Cathy and Keith, I'll let you go first. Cathy, can you just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
And then we'll get into the questions when we're done.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Cathy Pearson, the Assistant County Administrator for Public Services, which is a wide variety of serving our citizens mostly on the social aspects of it: parks, libraries, PCBT, our transportation, veterans, human services, community development, and animal services, an array of different things. And been with the county for about 5.5 years. Been in Pasco in this position for about 17 years overall with county government and a wide variety of public services. I was private before I came to public. So a little bit about me. All
right. Thank you. Keith?
Hi, everybody. I'm Keith Wiley. I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources. I'm a Florida native, proud of that. Basically, got a degree in wildlife biology from Colorado State University. Been with the county for about 10 years. Started with their environmental lands program. And then about four or 5 years ago, we merged with the Parks team and became that long title that's difficult to say, Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources. I think it's always important to me to have some meaningful occupation that I gave back to the community, and found myself in the public sector and have been there pretty much 15, 16 years. So,
all right. Well, thanks. So as we go into this, the county has mission, vision, values. We want to be Florida's premier county. Mission is we serve our community, create a better future. And then we have the values: integrity, respect, service excellence, and innovation. So as you go about your day-to-day work in your roles, how do you use your specific leadership philosophy to kind of embed those things into the organization?
You want me to go first? So sure. I will tell you, I am a totally different leader than I was 20 years ago. And so as you learn and you go through your leadership journey, I look back at myself 20 years ago, and I was I probably was a leader for me and not for the people. And now I feel I'm more of I really care for my people, but I also want to challenge them directly when they're doing something that may need to be improved on. So those have been some challenges for me through the whole journey, and I've learned from a lot of folks, as you've had good bosses and you had bad bosses. And I probably was a bad boss at one time that somebody's learned from me. But I've also learned from my bad bosses not what to do. So it's been a real challenge, and you just have to really, my biggest thing is you really got to show you care for your folks.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks.
So I'll start with saying that I don't think Cathy's a bad boss at all. So she's actually my boss.
I'm different, remember.
Yeah. Well, I think for me it gets back to that meaningful, contribution back to the community and getting the team to kind of buy into what they do, though it may not be evident to them, like as they do their day-to-day routine, right, that what they do does impact someone in the community. So I think what I always try to do is get them to see that some way. So there was a time about 2 years ago now, I went to a meeting out at Wesley Chapel District Park. It was around 7:30 at night, and I walked out, got out of the car, and there was every field was booming. There was kids, parents everywhere. It seemed like there was thousands of people. And Brian Taylor was the manager for the park side, was also with me. We were going to go to a league meeting, so that's always fun to attend at night. But he said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Have you ever taken the team outside of their daily shift and bring them to like this time of the day so they can see that mowing the fields, fertilizer, fencing, all that stuff, that all allow, a safe playing surface, that allows all this to happen." It was just it was a big moment for me, at least in my career, as I, kind of merged into the parks world. But I think that's important to get those folks to see that what they do, they may not see it every day. They need to, because sometimes that just might be the difference between someone doing an okay job and an amazing job.
Right.
If I can add a little bit. So another thing that I want to tag on a little bit about that. So there's been a documentary out on Garth Brooks, and it was aired this week. And I'm a huge country western fan, and he's probably one of the greatest country artists around. And he has a way of knowing how to really present himself. And one of the things he said in this documentary was, great entertainers perform for the people. They don't perform for themselves. And I took that as leadership. That's the same with leadership. As to be a good leader, we have to make sure we're there for them and not for ourselves. And that has been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through my journey, is that you have to be there for your folks. You have to connect with them. And Garth Brooks connects with his audience, and we have to connect with our folks. If you don't have that connection, you don't have trust, you don't have anything. So you got to connect with them.
Right. So we won't discuss greatest country and western singers, because I would have voted for George Strait. But
he's up there too.
So
I said one of them.
One of them.
No, you might have said D.
I think you said D. Yeah, I think you said D. Okay. So, and those are great. And I look at it, and we talk a lot about our people. We talk a leadership philosophy of taking care of our people, serving our people, and while we don't necessarily use the word servant leadership a lot, the philosophies are behind it, about just taking care of our people, making sure they have the tools, resources necessary to do their job. So, as in terms of leadership, when I look back, my biggest influence is probably my dad over in developing my leadership skills until I left and went to A&M and the Corps and then the military after that. And really because he was a pastor, managed he was churches, right? And so that brand of servant leadership he brought to that is kind of what built my leadership philosophy over time. And so the question really for you, and I want to talk about it a little bit, is so who's been your biggest influence on your life with respect to leadership?
Mm-hmm. I have a couple of them. So I was going to say my mom, because my mom, I lost my dad at a very young age. So my mom, I was 4. My dad passed away from a massive heart attack. And my mom was from the philosophy, she didn't even know how to write a checkbook. She didn't even know how to write a check. She didn't know how to balance a book. She didn't know anything. Dad took care of all that. So she was left with a 10, 4, and a newborn. And so when my mom had to learn all those things, she instilled in us that. And I knew right from there I had to become a leader. I had to be able to make sure that I can sustain and take care of myself. And so I learned that from her. And that's been a big part of my leadership. The second person is a county administrator that I did have on a former job. And he was a county commissioner for 8 years. And then he became the county administrator. And so when I came into public service, I came from the private world, had no idea what public service, how the private versus public, that's totally different. I wanted to know why we couldn't get things done today. And it was a way I had to learn. I had to learn that. Right. And he taught me that. But the biggest lesson I learned from him is he knew how to be ahead of the game. He knew how to be transparent. He knew how to make sure that you were in front of the story and not behind the story. Be in front of the story. And the other thing I learned from him is you could walk into a room and he would mingle with every person in there, and he didn't ask you what your title was. He didn't ask you whether you were the janitor or the mechanic, or he mingled with everybody, and everybody felt so important because of that. And so those are probably my 2 biggest influences for me.
Okay. All right.
So I don't have a positive dad story, but I didn't have a very good relationship with him. But I did have an uncle, Uncle Bud, and he kind of was that mentor, father figure for me. And he used to work at, he actually passed away of cancer about 5 or 6 years ago. He used to work at Valpak down in Pinellas County as vice president. It's like a coupon mailing company. Mm-hmm. Big, it was small, but turned into a pretty big business. He used to, when I was younger, he would take me to his office all the time. And and we would always go in through the back door. And he had this Jaguar and always dressed nice. And it would take forever to get to his office because I was a little guy. But it would take forever because he'd go in through the back, like the docks, and he would talk to like everybody. How you doing? What's going on? And I would be like, Uncle Bud, why don't you just go in through the front? And he says, well, that's my time that I can, get to, talk to the team and get to know what their issues are, see how they're doing, how their family is and whatnot. And he always used to tell me, the work is easy, right? Work for your people, and then you'll have to really do less at the end of the day because they're going to do amazing stuff for you.
Right.
And so he always instilled in me, that the relationship piece, and this is something that we're, as an organization, we're talking about all the time now, but we hadn't been for a while, so it's very refreshing for me to be a part of the team now. But he just said, be loyal to your people, show them through actions that you care about them, and the team as a whole will you'll have success in your career. And so I've just taken that to heart.
Okay. So what are some ways that both of you, the branch public services, 2 words, covers a vast array of different services we offer, from libraries to public transportation to veteran services to elderly nutrition. How do you take this philosophy in all those arenas? And then kind of, Keith, everything from the natural resources, Bugs and Bunny stuff, to soccer and the soccer moms and all the leagues stuff you have to deal with. How do you take those philosophies across that vast array of responsibilities that you have?
You have to trust your people. And that's the biggest thing. You have to empower your people. I can't be there at every spot. I can't talk to every citizen. So that's why we have the people, our teammates that do that. And you have to be able to let them make their mistakes, let them shine, praise them, and encourage them. That's the biggest thing. You've got to encourage your team to be able to go out and take care of that. I'm here for them when they run into a roadblock, or I'm here for them if they want to bounce something off of me that maybe they're not quite sure of. But I'm there for them if they need me to come to a meeting, like I did with Keith. And the look he was giving me that night,
yes,
when
ma'am.
He was and with the little leagues and all of that. So I was there more for encouragement. Keith did the whole thing. His team did the whole thing. But I was there for encouragement because I wanted to be there to support him. And
that's big because, that support gives you the confidence to do what you need to do at that moment in time. And not having it, I think, it makes a difference.
Or you're unsure.
Yeah.
Or am I going to, by just having somebody there with you, you're encouraging them to do it. And you got to get out with your folks. You got to get out there with them. I can't tell you how I've started that, thanks to you, Dan, for the last 2 years, and it has made a huge difference. And they can't wait till I come out. When are you coming to see my park? When are you coming to ride on the bus? When are you going to do this? Yeah. And so it's made a huge difference because they're proud. They're proud. They want to show off what they're really doing because we are making a big impact to our citizens. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and you recently spent time on riding the bus up and down 19.
I did. And so you want me to share that story?
Sure.
So I did. I rode the Route 19 bus with Rosemary, who's our outreach person for the bus. And we went up and down 19, and it was very busy. A lot of people coming on the bus that here I am with my nice clothes and my little designer bag and everything, and we had a great time. And one gentleman come on, and he had no money. Come on the bus, and he just had no money, and he had all the bags on him. We let him on. I started sitting talking to him, and he was homeless. And so we got chatting, and I said, how old are you? I'm about 20 years old. And I'm like, dude, why do you live like this? Why? You're just a good-looking kid. And he was like, sharing me some personal experiences because they have issues. That's what led them to this. And I would say, you have no money. How are you getting your food? I sit at McDonald's until somebody buys me a burger. Well, you have a cell phone. How are you paying for that cell phone? I'm seeing your cell phone. Oh, I didn't pay for this. He said, I just plug it in. Everything's been shut off. I just plug it in. I go to McDonald's. I get their Wi-Fi. I map out where I'm going next. Well, how do you make a phone call? Well, there's an app you can download to make a phone call on the Wi-Fi. I learned so much from that.
Right.
And even the bus driver was, and I always send thank you notes.
Right.
When I'm done, I send thank you note to the bus driver. I send thank you note to Rosemary. And we really had a great time. And one night I rode a paratransit bus about a month ago. And there was a lady on the bus, and her leg was half amputated. And so started chatting with her about, how do you like the bus and all that. And you could tell she was very bitter because she's in that situation. She said, a year ago I was independent. I was independent a year ago. And I rely on my bus drivers now to take me. I just wish we could have a day where you would take us just shopping one day to the Wiregrass Mall. Well, guess what? We're doing it December 12th. Because we listen to our folks. Our folks want to do this. They don't have time sometimes to hear all the ideas either.
Right.
But they make the idea and our team makes it happen. Right. And how powerful is that?
Yeah. Great story. So Keith, you parks, Bugs and Bunnies.
Yeah.
Leagues.
Yeah.
You got park at the very southwest corner of the county, and then you have one at the very northwest corner of the county.
Yeah.
How do you manage that breadth?
Yeah.
And lead that breadth?
So I think that the philosophy of wandering around a bit is something that I think I've always done, but now again it's encouraged to do. It's amazing what you learn if you swing into a facility and just say, hey, how's it going? Now, I will admit that wasn't the culture, so when I started to do that, it freaked a lot of people out, and they were like, why is he here? Why is he asking so many questions? But the information that you gain from those kind of experiences and maybe necessarily unplanned meetings is invaluable. But to Cathy's point, I'm blessed to have a team that really, really cares about what they do and are very, very passionate and very knowledgeable as well. So you don't need to know every detail, and you have to have a high level of trust that the team's making good decisions. I think that for me, again, kind of transitioning from the natural resources world to the parks world, there was a steep learning curve initially, but luckily I had a team in place that with the right encouragement, made the right statements, right? Then you get that trust built, and then you're like, well, you don't need to talk to me anymore. That's a good decision. Just continue to move on.
And they are blossoming.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
of your leadership. They're blossoming.
Thank you. But
seriously.
I mean,
they would 3 years ago. They would be afraid to make those decisions. They were timid. They were.
I think that was probably the hardest part. Was when you. So my style of leadership is sometimes I forget that I'm a leader, right? So which is probably a good thing. So I'm extremely open. It's pretty much my personality, but in a culture where that wasn't historically the case, it's kind of frightening for some people. Right. And I think that took a bit of time. And, once they realized, no, he actually is asking those questions because he genuinely wants to help you in your job. Right. You get past that, and then that's when a lot of good stuff starts happening.
Absolutely.
So I heard trust mentioned a lot. And I've heard, caring for your people a lot. You could probably take the words and call that love, right? Kind of a weird word sometimes in the English language because it means so many different things. But how do you, with respect to those two words and your teams, how do you continue, or how does a younger person who's coming into the career field work on building those skills in what is a low trust culture, right? We live and work in a low trust, not Pasco County, but the United States in general. We're a pretty low trust culture, right? How do you build those skills into those people, or how would a young person listening to this say, okay, those are some skills? How would you mentor them to build those kinds of skills in what they're doing?
First of all, how I learned, and I think this is how all of us are going to learn. When you listen to your folks and there's an idea, and it's a good idea, you got to let them create that idea. If we're just listening and not doing anything about it, then there's no trust. And so I guess my motto is that if your team does not believe in the messenger, then the message is never going to get done. It's not going to be trusted. So as a young leader, you have to encourage your folks to come with those ideas, and you have to act on them. And if you don't act on them, you have to tell them why they can't be acted on it. Right. That's so many times in my career, I've been so gung-ho about a project, and I'll go to my boss, and my boss goes, oh, that's nice. And then when I go to implement it, I get shut down.
Or there's no support.
Or there's no support.
For you to feel comfortable to implement
Thank
it.
you.
Right.
Thank you. And that's where I think distinguishes great leaders from just mediocre leaders. So,
Right.
So when you do that, and you've given that trust to your team, and then they make a mistake.
mm-hmm.
So that's a defining moment, right?
Absolutely.
There's a way to continue to build the trust, and there's a way not to. How do you deal with that when they come to you and they say, "This is what we did," and you're like, "Boy, I wouldn't have done it that way."
Yeah.
How do you? What are some ways you deal with that to continue to build that trust level?
I would say, how do you not make mistakes? I mean, it happens, right? So, that happened in my office, and someone, knocks on the door, and I think we made a mistake. And I'm like, well, that's okay. We're not going to bat 1,000. I mean, that's impossible. So,
and I think I will never sit down with somebody and say, I would have done it differently. That's
right.
number one. I would never say that, because that already is creating the defense mode. So the first thing I would probably say is, it's okay, let's talk about it, and how are we not going to make this happen again?
Right.
What'd you learn from this? Because believe me, I have messed up tons of time, but I've learned every time, and I think that's what makes you build to be a better leader, because it's okay to fail. It's
Right.
okay to fall. It
I
really
think
is.
the problem, the issue there is if you see that repetition, because
Exactly.
to Cathy's point, you'd
Then
like
it's a different
to
story.
grow and evolve
Right.
from that, and if you keep, it's kind of like that old mantra, the guy that walks down the street and keeps falling in the hole. Eventually, you'd like to see that he either walks around it or jumps over it.
Right.
So,
Okay.
let's learn.
I think the biggest, I always tell my folks this, that if you mess up on paperwork and things like that, we can get through that. But when you mess up with the public, boy, that's a lot harder to clean up.
Mhm.
So those are the things you really have to talk about. And they come to me and they've messed up on, a numbers or something, and they didn't pay a bill.
We
I'm
haven't
okay.
done that though.
No.
My team. Yeah.
Never.
See, I just wanted for the
Never.
record. No,
but
I'm
it's
just
the
teasing.
public stuff that is the
Right.
hardest thing to fix,
Right.
or longer, I should say.
Right. Okay. So, just kind of going back to as we talk about younger leaders, in your career, when did you decide you wanted to lead others? Because we all have a decision point where I want to be in the technical role, or I'm going to be in sales or that.
Mhm.
At some point, you have to make a decision to go. I want to go from the technical piece to the leadership piece.
Believe it or not, for me, is when my mom, from a very young age, when I saw my mom and the struggles, I knew right then that sometimes I had to lead the household, because she had to work 2 or 3 jobs. And my brother, was going through his own issues because of the loss of his dad at 10 years old. And so then I became the student government. I was in student government. I was the captain of the cheerleaders. I knew right then and
You were
there.
the captain of the cheerleaders?
I was co-captain. You want to see a picture?
I would like to see that.
I'm going to show it to you after this. I have it in my phone because somebody just sent it to me.
You're never getting away with that again. So the next director's meeting, we're talking about that.
I'll put it up on the screen for you and see if you can pick me out. But so that knew right then and there that I was probably born to do this
Right.
because of my experience.
Yeah, and Keith, your background's in biology, the biologist background in the field and that kind of stuff. So how do you, once you take that leadership role, you're going to get out of the field?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I used to tell my kids, I had this great day in the field and I did this and did that. And now they say, well, what'd you do, Dad? I'm like, well, I talked to a lot of people and I read a lot of emails and went to a lot of meetings. And they're like, well, that doesn't
right.
sound like, for me, I don't think there was a defining moment. I think I kept finding myself in rooms with people where solutions or decisions needed to be made, and I found myself wondering why no one was saying anything, and I was the only one saying something, regardless of what the issue was. So it just kind of naturally happened. I don't think I had any intention of being a leader. To be quite honest with you, I'm uncomfortable with the limelight and even doing things like this. But I think
you're
it's
not. You're fine.
No,
You're doing good.
No. At the end of the day, it's not my comfort zone. So, but
Right.
I think again, getting back to that meaningful contribution, you got to kind of do what your calling is at the end of the day. So, you just kind of found myself
Right.
here, I think.
And you got the introvert down at this end of the room. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to tag on a little bit more about the young, when
Okay.
you're talking about the
Yeah.
young leaders. So what us as leaders have to be careful is that we don't focus on their generation.
Right.
and making sure, and I learned that from you. So don't focus on the generation, focus on the person as a whole. And so that sometimes can get in the way of some leaders that this millennium or millennial, don't do that.
Yeah, we're all people.
We're all people.
Doesn't matter when you were born.
Exactly.
All people. We just have
and
different life experiences.
If they want to become a leader and they want to mentor and be beside you to do that, then mentor them all the way.
Yeah.
All right. So going back to that, how do you raise up young leaders or leaders in your organization?
So I'm going to use Brian Hoban, my program administrator, for an example. Okay, so Brian has been with me 2 years now, and so when he came into the organization, at least into public services, we're still trying to figure out what his role is and how we're going to communicate and all that kind of good thing. And Brian's probably going to kill me when I tell him this, but I say this on podcasts. But I remember the distinct day that he was with me for about 3 months, and I felt that he was waiting for me to tell him what to do or waiting for me to give him assignments. And we brought him in, and I said, listen, that's not this role. You have my full support to go out there and build your relationships with the directors. Don't wait for me to give you assignments. Go out there, and I have a particular assignment I'm going to get. And I remember the look on his face. He was like, and from that day on, that guy has gone to the moon and further. I mean, he is tremendous.
He's definitely started emailing us more. That's
and I think you have to have that conversation that if they want to be in that role and he chose to be in that role, you have to help them in a professional way to get there and give them the support. Don't wait for me. Go for it. Go for it. You don't have to ask me everything.
Right.
So I think bringing people into the organization at any level is probably one of the most critical decisions a team can make. So what I tell the group is, hey, look for the most talented person out there. They may not have everything you need on the piece of paper, but if the chemistry's right, if the emotional intelligence is there, the passion to do our work is there. Bring them on, because that's that little extra oomph that they need to kind of, a lot of this stuff is, people say opening, like leadership. You're supposed to open a door for your team so they can get to the next hallway, to the next room. Let's be honest, sometimes it's more than just opening a door. It's literally dropping your shoulder and knocking the door down, depending on what the issue is. So you kind of really need that extra oomph, you know what I mean, to kind of make that happen. And sometimes you only kind of crack the door. So I think that little extra passion is kind of what you're looking for. So you wander around, you observe, you look at your team, and you start to see who those folks are, and you put them in positions and give them opportunities to expand and to develop and stuff like that. And the other really important thing is identifying someone may be really, really good at their job, but they may not be ready for that at that point in time.
Right.
So what you don't want to do is throw someone in a situation that they can't really handle just because they're showing some aptitude in a certain area. They may be technically sound, but maybe they're not an outstanding leader. So
because not everybody wants to be a leader either.
Yeah, so you have to know that. So I think you have to you got to observe and you got to watch, and it gets back to the relationship piece. You have to know who these people are. They can't just be names on an org chart. You got to know so and so. Oh well, this is what their life is like right now. And this is what they're ready for. And I think that's a big piece.
Just yesterday I sat with one of our case managers, and so we were waiting for an appointment to come for a client because I wanted to see her in action on that, and the person never came. But we sat there for an hour and a half and just talked. And that, to me, was better than sitting and watching her in action, because I learned so much about her. She learned about me. We talked about Pasco. We talked about what it was like when she first started and all that kind of good thing. And to me, that's... We talked, do you ever want to be lead? No, I don't want to be lead. I'm very happy where I am. I want to be a case manager till I retire.
Right.
Yeah. And so those are the things
and
that...
that's not bad.
It's not.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
And you shouldn't feel like, well, I failed because I couldn't move that person up a peg in the organization.
And she's an excellent case manager.
Sometimes that's actually... I think that's also really showing really good signs of leadership, that you're putting people in the right place, because that's another piece to it also.
It goes back to the Jim Collins, not just get on the bus, the right people on the bus, but get them in the right seat.
On the right seat,
on the bus.
Absolutely.
So, Cathy, just want to touch a little bit on, in local government, I think the number is about 16 to 17% of chief administrative officials, so city managers, county administrators, are female in the country. Here in Pasco, if you look at our leadership team, down to if you cut the slice at the assistant director level, we're about 38% female. Countywide employees about 33%, so a little more than countywide employees. So, but one of the things is, we're coming through, our generations, more male dominated in the workforce. How do we develop the women leaders? Because it's not necessarily the same development curve as the guys. So what are some of your thoughts on that?
This may sound corny to you, but it's really true. I never played the female card, number one. I always thought of myself as a leader or good at my position. And that's how I think a lot of successful females have to think about it, is that I'm good at my job and I'm confident in my job. And whether I'm surrounded by men really does not matter to me. So I think, but some women aren't there yet. And so I think, as for me as a female, I need to encourage some of those women that want to go into leadership roles and coach them to know that it's okay, that you're going to have your stumble blocks, because sometimes when we say things, women do, we're looked upon differently than if a man says it. I want to say the word, but I won't say that word. So sometimes we're looked upon as being, it's okay for Keith to say something, and sometimes it gets paid attention to, but sometimes we're too emotional, or tend to be rude or whatever.
Right.
So those are things that you've had to learn, but us women in leadership need to help mentor, encourage.
So what advice would you have for like Keith and I with respect to mentoring women in leadership and developing that? Because we don't want to just develop part of our organization. We want to develop 100% of our organization of those that want to be leaders to be leaders.
So I would say to you is, again, I wouldn't say just because they're a female. If they're potential leaders, whether they're a male or a female, it's your jobs to develop them. And so I don't look at it that way. And if the female is having issues with that, then send them my way, or send them to another woman. That we do have some other directors that are women. Send them their way to help them develop that. Maybe we have a leadership development. Maybe we need to start a women's development class or something like that to help with that. I think that'd be a great idea.
I don't know if it's I'd like to add something. I mean, I think they should be bold. I mean, I don't think that. I think you need to continue to just dispel a lot of those old stereotypes.
Exactly.
That, if someone, has that potential, that they shouldn't be, dominant or bold or assertive in trying to move an agenda forward without actually, being accused of something negative.
Right.
I think I would like to believe that we're getting past that. So I would
too.
encourage them to continue. And I have a few females that are in leadership positions in the department, and I encourage them to do that all the time. Don't
I'm
be
trying to
quiet.
think of all our directors, and I think we're pretty half and half with public services.
Don't be quiet. Yeah, continue to be bold and do what you think is right.
Okay. So before I get into the lightning round, because any tools, words of wisdom you'd want to share with our listeners that we didn't kind of get to yet?
I do want to share something that to be a leader, you got to mean what you say and say what you do. You got to do it, and you got to be that, and you have to listen and care for your folks, and they cannot be afraid to come to you on anything, and we have to surround ourselves with people that are encouraging and not discouraging. That's probably my biggest tip for anybody. If you have some people that are bringing you down, don't hang around with them. Don't stay with them. Don't even be with them. We need to get them out of the organization. So that's probably one of my biggest.
Okay.
And I think we've done a lot of that.
Yeah. I think we are evolving from a cultural perspective. I would say, I hate to. She could probably hire me as an agent, but that Kim Scott book that we read,
Yes.
Radical Candor.
Radical Candor.
Absolutely.
I mean, care deeply and speak directly or whatever. I mean, I think that
Challenge directly, care personally.
So simple, and it's kind of like when you're in these meetings and you hear that, you're like, oh well, that's common sense, but again, it's so simple, and I think we miss it, because we feel like we're a supervisor and people need to follow us because of our title. People are going to follow you if they know you care about them and what we're trying to do as a team. But again, I think the higher up that you go in an organization, you can't be afraid to realize that it does take sometimes a little extra work. And at the end of the day, I think we watched a video the other day. I actually asked Paula for the link. It kind of clicked for me. It was the momentum piece in leadership. And I feel like that's kind of where you need to get to, right? Mm-hmm. And then everything else kind of, I believe, will kind of solve itself. And I think sometimes getting to that momentum piece, going back to that analogy of the doorway and the hallway, sometimes you have to be a little fearless, not reckless, fearless and persistent, and kind of get to that point to create the momentum. It's very, very difficult sometimes, but you have to get there. A lot of times I say, you don't necessarily need to be the smartest person in the room. Sometimes you just have to have really strong willpower to get there. So,
and I love this saying: people don't start to believe until they feel that they belong.
Right.
And that's such a great philosophy. I mean, really, we have to, and that's part of it.
All goes back to people, right? And
I'll
you're
go back to
referencing the John
people.
Maxwell
Yes,
5 levels of
yes,
leadership
that's
video that we watched. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to do a real quick lightning round. Really this is kind of supposed to be a little fun. Also let the listeners learn a little more about us. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of alternate, but I want you both to answer both questions. And we'll do a few of these. I'm not going to do all 12. Well, maybe the last one's interesting. So, Cathy, texting or talking? Which do you prefer?
Talking.
Talking? Keith?
Talking.
Talking? Well, that's the non-Z generation right there. So
That's the public services in us.
yeah, there you go. So, Keith, favorite day of the week?
Monday.
Monday. Wow.
Yeah.
Don't hear that one very often. Cathy?
Mine's Friday.
Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, mine's one that ends in a Y. How about that? Cathy, favorite city in the U.S. besides the one you live in?
Probably Boston.
Really? I was going to say Disneyland, but
Well,
that's the happiest place on earth.
It is. And my second is Las Vegas, believe it or not. So
Boston. Okay.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Denver.
Denver. All right. So, nickname your parents used to call you?
Wow. Chi-Chi beans.
Chi-Chi beans.
Yeah, that's
It
out
was
there
just
forever
Catherine.
now.
Just Catherine?
Catherine Ann.
Catherine Ann? Well, that was the bad news. That was the...
That was
yeah,
that was the every day.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a interesting one because it's a technology one. The last song you downloaded, because how many people download songs anymore?
Wow.
I just downloaded the whole Frozen 2
Oh, well, of course.
album.
Of course. Disney.
I did.
Yeah.
Probably like something from Big Jacko Pierce, or I couldn't even tell you. It's been probably 10 years, 12 years since I've downloaded a song.
So, favorite holiday? We're in holiday season.
Halloween.
Halloween?
Mine's Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You notice I have not answered any of these.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
when
I
you
thought we
going to
were- I
answer?
thought we were
I
lightning
thought we were
round.
Oh, you
going
want me to do
lightning
this?
around.
So, talking or texting, depending. I said, why? Favorite city? Probably San Antonio. Got married there, so love that place. I'm not going to answer that. Nickname. It was Danny, but yeah, I still get called that by somebody
I
special.
know, we heard that from
Yeah.
your wife not too
Yeah.
long ago.
Last song I downloaded was Kanye's new album. So, did I say his name right? Because
Yeah.
I used to not say his name right.
Mhm.
I
I
got
think that's
corrected.
right. That's
Yeah.
correct.
That's
So,
right.
I like the combination of Christmas, New Year's, just the holiday season, because of you see part of the world's attitude changes between Thanksgiving and the end of the year that you don't see the other 10 months of the year.
Right.
So, all right. Yeah. What age do you want to retire?
Well,
Now, this is not
my
this is not
husband-
a part of a.
so
you know,
my husband tells me between 70 and 75.
Mm-hmm.
That's my husband because he wants to retire, and so he wants me to keep working. I really don't know.
Wow.
So, yeah, nice guy,
Yeah,
huh?
I thought you said he's a nice guy.
So
but
he is a really nice guy, but when it comes to that, I really don't know. As long as I have it here,
Right.
and I got the energy, and I got a fantastic team, and the political environment is great,
Right.
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
62.
62.
Yeah.
Man, that's young.
Yeah, I don't know. You want to be, I don't know, you want to do stuff, and it's hard to do stuff with work-life balance, children, and stuff like that. So I'd like to, get
Okay.
to, I'd like
Yeah,
to get
no,
to
fair
it.
enough.
you know.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
All right, you
Not
answer.
saying that'll
What's
happen.
I'll
yours?
say this is my third career. I'll start a fourth career. I don't know if I'll ever retire. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
unless
know either.
unless I just can't get out of bed and I'm needed. I
Exactly.
need help for everything. Which that's probably a few decades away. Is this wood? So, all right. So, last question: is it wrong for a vegetarian to eat animal crackers?
Wow, that's a great question.
Vegetarian eat animal crackers.
Yeah. Yeah. I would.
I'm not a vegetarian. I eat everything. So for me, they need to stay away from any food that I want to have because they're always off me what I eat. So
Okay.
I think it's terrible.
I
then.
guess if they were thinking that there was some soul connection of the image of the animal to the actual
Absolutely.
animal, then there might be an issue. But I think
I really don't care. Do
yeah,
you?
no, I
Yeah.
don't-
Okay. There we go. Hey.
I'm good.
I don't
There we go.
really care.
So, hey, I want to thank both of you for being here today, Cathy and Keith. It's great to have you both.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
being the first one.
Yeah, this is
And
awesome.
so
Can I give him a
first
high five?
more many,
job,
and so
Cathy.
and also
job.
as we wrap up, I want to spay. There you go, animal
Spay
services
and
right
neuter?
there. Spay and neuter.
Mike would be proud.
Save. Yeah, he would. Special thanks to our media relations team who really made this effort possible. Tambry Lane, Brendan Fitterer. Did I get that right? I wasn't sure. Aaron Legg, the whole team, they do a great job for us here in Pasco County. And sometimes we don't recognize the behind-the-scenes people enough. And I can't leave without a shout-out to my chief of staff who pulls all this stuff together. So
Paula.
Paula Barcaldo does great work, and so I appreciate her as well. And so thank you for joining us for the first episode of Pasco Podcast. I'm Dan Biles, and so until the next one, thanks and have a great day.